The other day, I watched something called Star Wars Episode 8: The Last Jedi. Apparently, they're still cranking these things out. I'm not sure exactly why. Although the heroes spend most of their time either running away from their enemies or failing in their endeavors, the movie still more or less kept my attention until the end. There is a certain fascination to be had in watching Rian Johnson, the likable writer-director of the movie, troll J. Abrams, who directed the first movie in the trilogy, by subverting the storylines he had set up over and over
Take that ridiculous thing off.
and over again. Johnson also takes a minute out of his day to subvert the expectations of his audience, and I do think that Poe can be seen as something of a stand-in for the audience.
Do you want to know the truth about your parents?
They were nobody.
They're filthy junk traders who sold you off for drinking money. You have no place in this story.
Not what I expected.
Oh.
I just want to know what's going on.
I feel something.
You feel it?
Yes, I feel it.
That's the force.
Really?
Wow, it must be really strong
Oh,
with
I've
you.
never felt any. Ow!
One also gets to see the lovely Rey practicing her thinking profound thoughts face,
Hello? Hello? Hello?
and go into very deep meditation indeed.
The island. Life. Death and decay. That feeds new life. Warmth. Cold. Peace. Violence. Balance. Energy. A force. Inside me. That same force.
All this kept me fairly distracted for most of the running time, but towards the end of the movie, a scene popped on the screen which made my jaw hit the floor.
That's the amazing part.
At about the 2 hour and 4 minute mark, Johnson asks us not only to suspend our disbelief, but also to turn off all functioning of our frontal lobe for about 2 minutes, while he subjects us to a series of events that could not happen in any galaxy, no matter how far away. To briefly set the stage, what's left of the browbeaten resistance is hiding nervously in a giant grotto on some sort of salt planet.
Salt.
They decide to send out 13,
Half-gutted skim speeders.
come again?
Half-gutted skim speeders.
If you don't know what that is, and frankly, why would you? This is what they look like.
I'm with you 100%.
I'm glad it's clear.
Continue.
So, as I said, they send out these 13 speeders to take out a giant cannon, threatening to blow down the door of the grotto. This cannon happens to be escorted by a detachment of war machines armed with lasers. To reach the cannon, the speeders will have to cross a vast no man's land, while being subjected to the fire of these war machines. The speeders start taking heavy losses.
We're taking heavy losses.
So basically, they're getting picked off like flies until there are only four of them left, who conveniently are Rose, Finn, Poe, and Poe's best buddy, Kai. Seeing their numbers dwindling rapidly, Poe orders a fallback.
It's a suicide run! All craft, pull away!
By this point in the movie, Poe has learned not to be reckless. Earlier, Leia had demoted him for that reason,
You're demoted.
and Holdo had told him,
I've dealt with plenty of trigger-happy flyboys like you. You're impulsive, dangerous, and the last thing we need right now. So stick to your post and follow my orders.
However, Finn refuses to turn back,
No, I'm almost there!
his plan being to make a kamikaze run at the cannon. Meanwhile, a wizened Poe skedaddles, sagely abandoning him, as does Kai, who just goes along with whatever Poe says anyway.
So far, so good.
I suppose, but this is where the wheels come flying off. To recap, it has been established that the war machines can take out the speeders at will. Finn and Rose are heading towards the cannon, which the war machines are there to protect. There is no one else in the no man's land in front of the war machines, and therefore they have no other targets. At that point, there is only one possible outcome.
Blow that piece of junk out of the sky! More! More!
Do you think you got him?
Yet, for no discernible reason, all the Imperial lasers fall completely silent.
Hello? 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 Hello?
Note that in the movie, this kamikaze attack lasts over a minute, which is to say an eternity. But Finn is not hit a single time. Can anyone give even a semblance of an explanation for this?
Yes.
What's your explanation then?
There's some sort of time continuum that breaks down. He turns into jello and he goes through it like this.
That's not an explanation.
Just because you haven't seen it doesn't mean it doesn't exist.
Johnson, however, is not done yet, and manages to outdo himself in absurdity. Even though he has shown a wide shot of Finn heading towards the cannon alone, and even a shot of Rose retreating, Rose magically reappears beside Finn in extremis, with the genius plan of ramming him in midair right in front of the enemy. She somehow manages to slam into Finn's speeder, the power of love, no doubt, and they both miraculously survive this crash at top speed. Must I remind you once again that all this is happening right, and I mean right in front of the enemy?
Hello? 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 Hello?
The outcome, of course, should be, well, you know the drill.
I want every gun we have to fire on that man.
Rose! More! More!
think you got him?
If by then you haven't walked out of the theater, you can witness Johnson outdoing himself once again in absurdity. He has Finn and Rose take the time to have a carefree chit chat.
Chit chat, haven't heard that word for a long time. Chit chat.
In no man's land, under the nose of the enemy.
Hello?
Perhaps Rose did get her bell rung a bit in the crash because she calls Finn
Tell me.
and comes up with a rather odd battle plan.
That's how we're gonna win. Not fighting what we hate. That's how we're gonna win. Not fighting what we hate. Saving what we love.
They also take the time to exchange a kiss as fireworks go off.
That's what love is.
Later on, they pop up in the grotto, with no explanation as to how they crossed the vast no man's land unscathed. All this is rather befuddling, and one is left with one question. How could a director as competent as Johnson insert a scene as awful as this one during the climax of a movie as prestigious as a Star Wars installment? A scene which he somehow manages to make not work in terms of physics, time, space, logic, emotion, reactions, character, dialogue, continuity, cause and effect, and which does not advance the story in any way, shape, or form. It does take some doing. To find a solution to this conundrum, we must treat this scene as a crime scene, don our deer stalker, and look for a motive. In order to do that, we must rewind the clock a bit and look at the overarching structure of the movie, such as it is. The movie is run through by three storylines. Well, that may be too strong of a word. Let's say threads. These threads are only very loosely connected and only come together towards the end of the movie. The first one is the leadership and retreat thread. The second one is the grumpy old mentor thread. And the third one is the wild goose chase thread. The main characters are respectively Poe, Leia, and Holdo, Luke and Rey, and Finn and Rose. These all come under a dual overarching theme of a movement from despair to hope, and of the passing of responsibility to the next generation. Under that banner, the main theme of the first thread is the transfer of leadership in a time of crisis, and the sub-theme is the nature of good leadership. The second thread is very close to the first one thematically, but takes place in the philosophical or metaphysical realm rather than in the military one. The third thread is mostly about failure. Finn and Rose run around all over the place, pretty much accomplishing nothing. I think that, structurally speaking, Johnson's idea for the end of the movie was to have a climactic moment of either heroism or enlightenment, which would be thematically relevant for each of his seven main characters. For the three characters of the older generation, their moments all involve accepting to pass on the torch to the next generation in a sign of hope in the future, either through a heroic act of self abnegation, as in the case of Holdo and Luke.
No. See you around, kid.
Or by ceding power in the case of Leia.
Follow me.
What are you looking at me for? Follow him.
For Poe and Rey, their moments involve showing that they are ready to take over. Poe by displaying wisdom in battle,
It's a suicide run! All craft, pull away! Retreat, Finn! That's an order!
Yeah, they ran through the briars and they ran through the brambles and they ran through the bushes where a rabbit couldn't go.
and Rey by using the Force to,
Make things float.
or more precisely, by
Lifting rocks.
a lot of rocks.
Hello? Hello?
At that point, Johnson is left with only one problem. How can he integrate a thematically charged, climactic moment for both Finn and Rose within the framework of his story? That's just it. He couldn't find a way to do it properly, but he did it anyway. In theory, it's a good idea to have Finn do a heroic action tinged with despair after all the failure he has known throughout the movie, and to have Rose act heroically to bring him hope again. But Johnson did not find actions for them to do that would fit concretely within the context of his story. To illustrate my theory, let me use an analogy. In the movie The Cincinnati Kid, Anne Margaret plays anyway, the point is, she has a very odd way of making a puzzle.
You've ruined the puzzle. Now that doesn't go in there.
It does now.
You probably have a pretty good idea where I'm going with this. The puzzle is the movie. Carl Malden is whoever happens to be watching it. The cut puzzle piece is the awful scene. And Anne Margaret is Rian Johnson. Okay, that last one might be a bit of a stretch. The lesson, of course, is that you can't force a scene into your movie if it just doesn't fit in your story, no matter how appropriate you think it might be thematically. I think that what happened is that Johnson got caught up in his themes and forgot to make the scene congruous story wise. But the problem is that for the movie to have any kind of impact thematically, the themes have to emerge organically from the story. And for that to happen, the story itself has to be coherent. You can't put the cart before the horse, as it were. The good news, however, is that Johnson is slated to direct his own Star Wars trilogy from A to Z.
I read it in a magazine.
So we'll get to see if he manages to turn the ship around after this misstep. Oops, no, apparently they cancelled his trilogy. Oh well, that's too bad.